Beneath the towering walls of the ancient palace, the young prince walked through golden halls where echoes of history whispered, secrets of kings and queens whose hearts had beaten in these same chambers. He moved with grace, yet burdened with the weight of duty that seemed heavier than the marble floors. Beneath his feet, every step resonated with expectation from the courtiers, from the servants, from the eyes that watched his every movement. From birth until now, the gardens beyond the palace were a realm of serenity, where roses climbed stone walls and fountains sang their eternal songs of water and reflection. It was there among petals wet with morning, dew and sunlight dancing through leaves that he first saw her. Her laughter carried on the breeze like a melody that belonged neither to this world nor to the one he knew. She was unlike anyone he had encountered in royal assemblies or diplomatic gatherings. She was free, unbound by ceremony, untainted by whispers of obligation. He remembered the first time their eyes met, as if the universe had paused to witness the meeting of two souls destined to collide. She had been tending the garden, with nimble fingers brushing the soil, planting life among life. He had approached quietly, curious about the serenity that surrounded her, and the world seemed to hush around them. There was no introduction, yet recognition lingered in the air like an unspoken promise. Days turned into weeks, and every stolen glance became a moment. Carved into memory, every passing moment with her felt forbidden yet essential. His heart rebelled against the scripts written by generations who had never known love beyond convenience and alliances, yet he could not resist the warmth of her presence nor the wisdom that shone in her eyes like sunlight piercing the morning mist. She spoke of dreams not of kingdoms but of life, of freedom, of choices that were untainted by duty and crown. He found himself wandering the corridors, not for meetings with advisors, not for counsel with generals, but to catch a glimpse of her or hear the soft echo of her laughter blending with the rustle of leaves in the palace gardens. His advisors noticed a change in his demeanor, a lightness mingled with tension, and yet none could place the reason behind the quiet defiance in his gaze. The prince, who had always obeyed without question, now lingered in thoughts of something unspoken, something forbidden. At night, when moonlight spilled over the marble floors, he would imagine her hand in his, the warmth of her fingers brushing against his palm. The stars above seemed to conspire with his desires, twinkling as though approving the rebellion that grew silently. Within his heart, he began to write in secret journals words of longing and sketches of her face, the curve of her smile, the depth in her eyes which held entire worlds that no courtly protocol could ever capture. The first moment of confession was never a planned act. It happened beneath an old oak tree in the farthest corner of the gardens, where shadows merged with silver light. He had approached with hesitation, fearing the consequences, fearing the whispers that would travel faster than the wind. Yet when their hands touched and their eyes held each other, the world seemed to vanish, leaving only the raw essence of connection. She spoke without words, and he listened without speech. The language of hearts is universal, and in That silent conversation, a bond, was forged stronger than any oath or decree. But the weight of the crown is relentless. The prince knew that love of this kind could ignite storms within the palace walls. The advisors would resist the unions that had been forbidden for centuries. The king and queen would see it as a rebellion not of politics but of propriety. Yet the more he thought of surrender, the more unbearable the idea became. The rules of royalty were iron chains, yet his heart yearned for freedom and for the chance to choose the path of affection over allegiance. Every day in secret they met beneath the veils of twilight. When the world was wrapped in shadows and silence, they would walk through labyrinthine gardens, sharing stories, sharing dreams, sharing moments that felt eternal. She told him of distant lands, of rivers that sang songs, of freedom, of mountains whose peaks touched the heavens, and of sunsets that set the skies aflame with hope. He listened with rapt attention, storing every word, every image, every feeling that painted her essence into his soul. In the quiet hours, he began to understand that love was more than desire. It was courage and defiance and patience. It was a choice to stand against the tide of expectation, even when the waves of duty threatened to drown him. It was a rebellion not against his family, but against a world that dictated whom one should love and how one should feel. It was a journey inward where heart and soul merged and found purpose. In the presence of another, the palace corridors grew colder. With whispers of suspicion, courtiers began to notice the distraction. In his eyes, the council questioned him about alliances, about plans, about matters that required unwavering attention. Yet he answered with half-hearted words while his mind wandered to stolen moments and silent smiles. He felt torn between obligation and desire, and every night he wrestled with dreams in which he walked hand in hand with her through endless meadows unbound by chains of gold or protocol. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and violet, he made a vow to himself to honor the love that had taken root despite the barriers. The wind carried the fragrance of blooming jasmine, and he could hear the faint echo of her laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. He realized that courage is born in moments of quiet determination, that love demands risk, and that the heart knows truth that no crown or court could ever dictate. Their love grew in secret, weaving itself into the tapestry of everyday life. Hidden gestures, whispered promises, fleeting touches that ignited sparks of hope and fear in equal measure. They learned the art of patience and timing, of glances that spoke volumes in the absence of words. They became each other's refuge from the suffocating weight of tradition and the endless scrutiny of the world beyond their secluded sanctuary. He began to dream of a future where their union was not hidden, where the warmth of her hand was celebrated, not condemned, where laughter was not a stolen treasure, but a shared gift. He imagined a palace where love was not a rebellion, but a bridge, connecting hearts across boundaries, across rules, across expectations. He knew the path would be treacherous, but the heart's desire burned too fiercely to be ignored. As the seasons shifted, the prince felt an awakening within himself, a transformation that made him see the world not through the lens of duty alone, but through the prism of possibility. He realized that life without love was a gilded cage, a series of gestures without meaning. A single smile, a single word from her had more power than all the decrees and proclamations. Of his lineage, he embraced the truth. That love was worth the risk, worth the defiance, worth the journey that lay ahead. And so the story began not with battles or crowns, but with hearts, daring to break free from the chains of expectation. It began with a prince who looked beyond the walls of tradition and a woman whose courage inspired his own thee. Gardens became their sanctuary, the shadows, their cloak, the whispers of the wind, their messenger. Each day became a testament to the resilience of affection, the rebellion of desire, and the quiet but unyielding force of a love that refused to be silenced. Beneath the same moon that had witnessed their first silent conversation, the prince pledged to himself and to her that no decree would ever diminish what had been planted in the soil of hearts intertwined. He knew the road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges that would test their resolve. Yet he felt a courage deeper than fear, conviction stronger than doubt. He understood that the journey of love is never measured in ease, but in the endurance of the soul. And so they continued to meet in the quiet corners of the palace gardens, walking hand in hand beneath ancient trees, sharing dreams, sharing hope, sharing moments that would one day define not only their lives, but the very essence of what it meant to love. Against the odds, their story had only begun, a journey of emotion and defiance, and every heartbeat carried the promise of more, every glance a vow, unspoken yet eternal. Morning arrived, wrapped in pale light and uncertainty. The prince awoke with the echo of dreams lingering in his chest, dreams where love walked freely through open gates and truth needed no disguise, yet reality returned with the weight of silk curtains, stone walls, and expectations carved deep into lineage. He rose slowly, knowing each day brought him closer to a choice that could reshape destiny. The palace stirred with life, servants moved like shadows, courtiers whispered behind veiled smiles. The air felt different, charged with questions, unasked yet clearly sensed. The prince felt eyes follow him more closely now, measuring his silence, his absence, his distracted gaze. Love had begun to leave traces, even where secrecy tried to erase them. She waited for him in the far corner of the garden where wildflowers grew untamed, defying the careful symmetry of royal design. That place reflected her spirit, free, resilient, unbowed. When he saw her standing there, sunlight catching in her hair, his heart steadied. She was his calm amid gathering storms. They walked together slowly, aware that even the trees seemed to listen. She spoke of unease, of strange looks and subtle warnings from those who sensed something forbidden blooming too brightly. He listened with concern, knowing that danger no longer belonged only to him. The rules he had defied now threatened to wound the one he loved. He wanted to promise safety, certainty, a future unshadowed by fear. Yet words felt fragile against the might of tradition. Instead, he offered presence and resolve. He told her that love was no longer a feeling hidden in shadows, but a truth rooted deeply within him, a truth he was prepared to defend. As days passed, the pressure tightened. The council summoned him more frequently, speaking of duty, alliances, and the urgent need for a suitable. Royal match names were spoken from. Noble houses across distant lands each presented. As destiny written long before his birth, he listened. Respectfully, but his heart recoiled. Each proposal felt like a cage disguised as honor. The queen noticed the change in her son. A mother sees what others overlook, the quiet. Resistance, the distant stare, the unspoken struggle, etched into posture and breath one evening. She asked him to walk with her, beneath the same moonlit arches where she herself had once walked as a young royal. Bound by choice, not love, she spoke of sacrifice, of the price of crowns of dreams buried beneath responsibility. Her voice carried both wisdom and sorrow. He felt her words press against his chest, yet something stronger. Pushed back, he realized that repeating the past would not honor it. Healing sometimes requires breaking cycles, not preserving them. That night, he returned to the gardens restless, searching for reassurance. He found her seated by the old oak, tree eyes lifted to the stars as if asking them questions only they could answer. He sat beside her, and for a long moment neither spoke. Silence became their shared refuge. She told him she feared becoming the reason for his downfall. He told her she was the reason for his awakening. They understood that love does not arrive without consequence, but neither does living without. Yet they held hands, grounding each other in the present moment where truth lived unafraid. Rumors began to spread like smoke slipping through cracks. A servant dismissed without explanation. A guard reassigned unexpectedly. The palace shifted subtly as if preparing for confrontation. Love had become visible not through action but through absence, through what could no longer be hidden. The prince felt anger stir, not violent but resolute. He had been shaped to lead, to protect, to stand firm. Yet when it came to his own heart, the world expected surrender. He questioned a system that praised bravery in war but condemned courage in love. One afternoon, he was summoned before the king. The room was vast, cold, adorned with symbols of power that had ruled generations. The king spoke calmly yet firmly about legacy, about stability, about choices that must favor the realm over desire. The prince listened, then spoke. Words that had waited years to be born. He spoke of love not as weakness, but as strength. Of unity not built on treaties, but on truth. Of a future where rulers understood the hearts of their people because they honored their own. His voice did not tremble. His resolve surprised even himself. The king dismissed him without judgment, yet without approval. The silence that followed was heavier than rebuke. It was the silence of crossroads, where paths diverge forever. That evening, the prince did not go to the gardens. Instead, he stood at the balcony overlooking the city lights below. He saw lives unfolding, freely, people choosing love, laughing, grieving, hoping without permission. He realized that a crown means little if it distances one from humanity. She waited, unaware of the conversation pacing beneath the trees, fear blooming. With every passing moment, when he finally arrived, relief softened into concern as she saw the weight he carried. He told her everything, no details spared, no fear concealed. Tears shimmered in her eyes, not of sadness, but of understanding. She knew then that love had reached the point of no return, They were no longer hiding from the world, but standing against it together. They spoke of possibilities, exile, freedom, defiance, sacrifice. None felt easy, yet all felt honest. Love had stripped away illusion, leaving only truth and courage. As dawn approached, they made a silent pact. Whatever came, they would not betray the bond they had forged, whether side by side or separated by fate. Their love would remain unbroken, a force no decree could erase. The prince returned to his chambers. Knowing sleep would not come, he stood before the mirror, seeing not just a royal heir, but a man transformed. Love had carved strength into his soul, clarity into his purpose. Outside the palace walls, the world continued, unaware that history was shifting quietly without swords or speeches. A revolution of the heart was underway. And so the journey deepened, not toward certainty, but toward authenticity. Not toward comfort, but toward meaning. Love had moved from secret to challenge, from refuge to rebellion. The prince no longer feared what lay ahead. He feared only a life unlived, a heart silenced by obedience. He knew now that true royalty is not inherited but earned through the courage to choose love even when the cost is everything. The night